Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers, and this morning I'm looking at a book which we've reviewed before. It's an excellent book on English land law by Martin Dixon, and he calls it Modern Land Law. It's in a 9th edition from Routledge, and this is the book here. That's what it looks like. Nice picture of a castle on the front. You know, your home is your castle. Appropriate for land law. That is the back cover, spine there. The book itself is very much a standard textbook from Routledge, Taylor and Francis Group. That's the index right at the back. There's a companion website, more of which I'll talk about later. Let me show you the books themselves. This is easements. You start off with the chapter contents there. You've got paragraph numbering on the side, which makes it very easy to find things. And there are quite a lot of footnotes you can see there with the case law. Obviously easements is particularly a favourite of mine because it's got so many fascinating cases. What you do have towards the end of each chapter is a chapter summary. I'll mention that in a bit more detail later. And that gives you an idea, an overview of basically what he's been talking about. There's his modern front page, Modern Land Law front page. It's dedicated to cornflake. I'm not going to make any further comment on that. That's a chapter of the topics he covers in 11 chapters. The detailed contents there you can see. I will just skip over. I want to refer specifically to the abbreviations, which are very relevant in land law. Then you've got his preface, which is very important. It tells you why he's had to change a few things from the previous edition. And this point is particularly important, the guide to the companion website, which you can see there. And it sets out what lecturers can do. There's a test bank, and there are multiple choice questions for learners, essay questions, podcasts, additional readings. So the learning process has changed quite a lot from the days when I did land law, which is rather a long time ago. You've then got all the statutes, because this is a statute-based subject, legislation of various sorts. Then, as I say, with each chapter you've got a little introduction at the beginning with an index, just to set out what the contents are, and then, as I say, there's the introduction, and then he leads in from that. The book's about just over 500 pages long. It's an excellent new edition. I've used it in the past for teaching, and I've found it extremely helpful. Now, what we've said about this in the journals and on the web is the following. I've given it the title, Dixon Continues to Dispel Fears when Studying the Daunting Prospect of English Land Law. Now, my review is basically very similar in some ways to what we said before. It's been written by myself and my wife Elizabeth, and this is what we say. We say we welcome the 9th edition of Martin Dixon's Modern Land Law, which has been thoroughly revised, taking account of recent developments in the light of the Law Commission's recommendations on easements and covenants, amongst many other things, I hasten to add. English land law continues to present learners, in our view, with a bit of a dilemma, because they will come into contact with substantial statute law and case law mixed with some complicated general rules about real property. It does cause problems for lecturers as well with the detail itself, which needs to be assimilated, including all recent decisions and continuing proposals for reform. I would say that the way land law is presented today is a great deal better than it was when I first encountered it, which is for over 40 years ago, when there just were not the materials available which we now have. And the way they express themselves as the writers of these books is to be commended, because it was not very well explained. It was very dry, all about the Law of Property Act 1925, and a real pain, frankly. But it has been made live as a subject, like the Law of Torts, because there's a lot of personal interest in it, especially in things like easements, covenants, and things like landlord and tenant, for instance. Now, getting back to the book, Dixon is back to the rescue again for us with this excellent new edition on the modern law. Many students will be well aware of his contribution to this important and difficult area from his other works, which are well known within the small circle of student lawyers and practitioners over the years. It's right to remind readers that English land law is often badly explained, as I've indicated, and badly taught, so it's refreshing to find a book which is user-friendly and dispels fears. I'm afraid that is the problem with land law. I certainly had some difficult lecturers and then one or two that made the subject come alive. And I think that's the way to approach it. Look at those areas of land law which you find interesting. And as I've indicated, easements is a particular favourite because it's got a lot of personal stuff and some quite funny cases as well. Dixon reminds us land law is steeped in history, reliant upon centuries-old tradition, and it's a bit of a jigsaw, as he says in the preface, from which a coherent pattern emerges, and you'll know the subject better with the realisation of the pattern when it becomes obvious to you. Now, at the end of each main chapter, as I've indicated, there's a summary and then a link to the important companion website, which I showed you how to access at the front. It's in the front of the book. And then there are the dreaded for some multiple choice questions, the MCQs, and there's a test bank, as I say, for lecturers, and an excellent list of abbreviations to assist the general understanding of issues raised in each chapter. Whilst the index is not over detailed, the contents at the front, which I indicated again, give a good lead as to what the learner may be looking for, and the book is especially useful, I think, for distance learners working alone. The skillful writing adopted by Martin Dixon throughout does assist a much better understanding of some of the many complexities of this subject and its rules, which are always considered one of the most difficult topics for the undergraduate. One tip we would offer, which does help with the study of this subject, is to know your case law in detail from the well-balanced table of cases he's included. I think Routledge are to be congratulated on the production of both the new edition and the companion website, which goes a long way down the road of understanding the more complex principles of the law of real property. But do look at the cases, for they offer a bit of light relief, and the human perspective from the dreaded statutes can be of great help, because the statutes are boring, frankly. But you've got to know what sections to look for. You've also got to know, of course, if you're doing the examinations, your way around the statute book if you're allowed to take it into the examination hall. I'd like to thank Martin anyway very much for this book. Just show it again. There it is. There's the back cover. A lot of information. He's a very well qualified person. This is interesting. Successive interests in land. Very interesting subjects. By the way, if you are in practice, in civil practice as I am, land law is one of the bedrocks in terms of what you need to know. For instance, here's an overview of the Land Registration Act from 2002. You've also got some figures as well which help too, little diagrams, because again, when you've got things like legal owners and equitable owners, you do have the overlap, of course, with equity and trusts, and it's again useful, but do keep them in their own compartments because you have to do the exams separately, but there is a little bit of an overlap. Anyway, thank you to Routledge and to Dixon very much indeed for what is a great help and companion to us. Bye bye.